Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here, along with Brad.
What's up, y'all?
And today, guys, we're going to be, of course, talking about The Last Dance, episodes 9 and 10, what we thought of the series finale. We know that this was a 10-part miniseries that ESPN did along with the director of it. I can't remember his name. But do you remember who it was?
I think it was Jason Hare. Jason Hare.
Jason
H
Hare.
E, yeah, Heir, something like that.
Yeah, nevertheless, this is probably going to boost a lot of his career going forward, and maybe ESPN will probably bring him in to do other documentary series, not only just basketball but football as well. Obviously, great cinematography. I like the way that it was shot. There was great action there. But we're here to talk about and review why we felt a little empty inside when we watched The Last Dance and what we really think about it. But before we do that, guys, we of course have to talk about what's going on in the NBA, as we have finally gotten some breaking news from Sham, from Woj, and that is, of course, that the NBA in mid-June is going to begin training camps, and possibly mid-July is the return of games, is the best possible scenario for the NBA. The article goes on to say that the prospect of players fully training in mid-June and beginning actual games by mid-July has been the most popular and possible scenario discussed, sources tell Sham. And we know that Disney is on track to be the host city of these NBA games where they're going to be in a bubble. It's almost, I think, what you called it, like a summer league, Brad,
Yeah,
like an Orlando summer league. So it's kind of one of those deals. So, Brad, let's start off with talking about it. What do we make of this scenario being here for the NBA that by July we're at least going to get some sort of basketball back?
I love it. I mean, I'm glad that they're finally able to come to a decision on it. Because a lot of teams, a lot of players wanted to play. All the fans want to see it. We need it during this time. So I'm glad they picked Orlando as the destination too, just because I like their courts. I've watched a lot of Orlando Summer League growing up and stuff. So I like their courts. I like the location. I think it's a good idea since Disney World is a private owned business. Nobody could stray out there and possibly infect the players. And it'd be a good little hub, like they said, to keep the players and have games.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. I think this is a great opportunity for these basketball players to not only showcase their skills, but also kind of a safe location for where they won't get infected. Also, Jared Dudley, I looked here for ESPN, said that they will be allowed to leave if they so choose to for whatever reason. But the thing is that if they do have the virus, that they're not allowed to play, obviously. So it's kind of a risk that you're taking, whether you're the sixth guy on the bench or whether you're the starter or the star player on the team. So that's also good news as well, that these teams are allowed to, or I guess these players are allowed that freedom to go, whether they want to visit their family. If they live in, let's say, Los Angeles and they have to go to Orlando, they can do that. But they just have to make sure that they're safe. And if they have the virus, they can't play. So I think that's a fair trade off. You know, obviously a safe location in Orlando, kind of almost like a AAU tournament style type of situation where you have all these AAU teams together in one housing unit. Um,
Those were fun. That's dope. That's why I really like it because it feels like AAU almost.
yeah. And I think that, like you said, this is going to be great news for the NBA. And, just kind of going on to that, what do you think? Who do you think is going to have the biggest advantage going into, I guess, the resume of the regular season? Like, what team do you think has the upper hand in all of this?
I don't think any team really has the upper hand. I mean, I guess besides the Orlando Magic, since all their games are going to be played at home now. But really, other than that, nobody. Just because everybody went through the same thing. They've all been at home, and training was up to them. So if you kept up with your training and kept grinding, then you'll have an advantage. But not really one, not one created by the situation. Like it was up to you to keep playing, to keep training, stay on top of things. Some people would say, um, you know, oh, why do I need to train? Like the season might not even come back, James Harden. But I wonder how he looks after. I wonder how he's going to look after this. Because I saw Austin Rivers said in his podcast that the Rockets have had voluntary workouts, like voluntary Zoom yoga meetings and stuff. And I know James Harden has not been to any of those because that man is living it up. So I don't think anyone really has an advantage. It's just everyone's even playing field. They've all gone through the same thing. And I would say even training during this time wasn't an advantage because you should have been training.
Yeah, I agree with you there. In the terms of, you should have been training, you should have been taking care of your body. This is, of course, an important time. We know that a month without basketball, or kind of that physicalness of just the hardship of the NBA season and just training in general. We know, if you don't train and then you go right back into it, that's how a lot of injuries occur, and that's how people get hurt. And I think, like you said, it's gonna be a very interesting situation to see which players have trained and which ones have not. But I think the question I was really asking was, what team will benefit without fans there? Like, what do you see an advantage for the lower seeded teams that kind of get emotionally sworn in by the emotions of a crowd? If there's like a big 3-pointer, we know that Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, when they were playing at Oracle Arena, had that same energy. I think the Miami Heat did when they were winning their championships. So with that atmosphere gone for most of these teams, do you feel like the lower seeded teams have an advantage, or not an advantage? Do you think that it's an equal playing field for them, with no real home court advantage besides the Orlando Magic? But I don't know if you can really call it a home court when the fans aren't there.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe
Before and
they
after
know
Corona.
they know the hoops in the gym better than anyone else, but that's really the only advantage they get. So um, I would say, yeah, the lower seeded teams can feel maybe like they have more of a chance without the fans screaming in their ears, home court advantage and all that. Um, but I heard they're going to play music, so maybe not having fans isn't like, it might not be that bad just because they'll be playing music, so it's kind of replacing the noise of the fans. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting, like we talked about. Many teams and many players are going. I mean, this is new for everybody. I mean, we know that no one's ever experienced this before, and it's going to be an interesting scenario to see. If they do play music, or they have pumped-in crowd music or crowd sounds to kind of simulate that the crowd is there, even though it's going to be empty. It's going to look weird if that
That'd be
happens.
terrible.
That'd
That'd be
be so
terrible.
bad.
They have to do music over that.
And what type of music are they going to play? Because this is Disney. Mickey Mouse, very clean. So it's gonna also depend on what type of music they play. Are we going to get some music from all the decades? I mean, it's just going to be a very interesting situation to figure out as we move forward here on the scenario for the NBA returning possibly in mid-July. Maybe we'll do a predictions video later on, but I still think that the Lakers, in my opinion, have the best chance to win the championship. I think that before we went on this sort of long-term break, I liked the way that they were playing, and I think that the Bucks and them would have met in the NBA Finals. Not sure what would have been the results. We'll probably talk about that in a later video, but nevertheless, this is going to be a fun scenario. The NBA is back. I know that Bundesliga soccer in Germany is back. The Premier League soccer in England is going to come back. And I know that most sports here in America are going to be coming back as well. As a lot of cities have decided that they were going to let pro sports teams start practicing, start opening up, because I feel like a lot of these states are scared that these sports teams are going to go elsewhere and not get that tax money that those governments want.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to keep their team so they can rack up. And here's with the NBA. Here's the thing. With the playoffs coming back, um, I'm wondering how long are they going to do training camp? How long are they going to do training camp? How many games in the regular season are they going to play? Are they going to try and finish it out for that TV deal, or do you think they just play a couple weeks and then go straight to the playoffs?
I think that what they're going to most likely do is I think they're just going to. I mean, that's hard because, I mean, if you cut the season, you know what? No, I think they're going to have to cut the season. Maybe play it 4 or 5 more games, maybe 6. Because I think that I think there's just too many games involved, and if you want to get the season done by August and not kind of linger on into the football season, which I think the NBA doesn't really want to do. I mean, obviously it'd be bigger than any of those college football games or any of the NFL games, just because it's playoff basketball, it's championship basketball. But nevertheless, I think that they don't want to dip into that because I don't think they want to saturate their market and get lower ratings. For example, like I would understand if it was the Bucks and the Lakers as a final, but let's say for example it's not those two teams and it's some lower ranked teams, like let's say the Orlando Magic. Sorry, I keep dissing them, but like if it was the Orlando Magic and some other crappy Western Conference team, I can't even think of what the seating's looking like right now. I think that they're going to lose a lot of money on that if they decide to have those teams play into the football season. So I think that they have to get it done immediately, and I think mid-July and hopefully by the end of August we'll get it all situated. And I think that it's almost kind of like handing the baton over to the NFL to start their season, and then I think that's going to be the future for the NBA in general. Is that they're going to start their season in Christmas time and then kind of go till August.
Okay, yeah, because that's the next question I was going to ask. So, what would they do for the next season? Because if they finish off the playoffs in August, right before football season, then how long is their off season? Do they pick back up in December?
I think they're going to have to, because I think in order to kind of keep up with the TV revenue, in order to keep up with the economy that they're trying to go for and trying to gain all the money and just those kind of services, I think that you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to start the season a little bit in December and give them a little bit shorter of a break, because I think once we get back into the regular routine and everything starts to come back to normal as it can be, then I think then you can have that kind of long break period for the NBA. And I think that the NBA could do wonders, because it's not like you're going to be starting immediately at the beginning of December. You're probably going to be starting more towards the end of the Christmas games, and then kind of going from January to August, basically.
You think they would go to August? I think they might shorten the season. They would have to do preseason in December, and then or they could start preseason a little earlier, but then that even shortens the break more. So maybe preseason in December and then start games in January. And I think they shortened the season by like 20 games because they've been already talking about shortening the season. So what better chance to experiment doing that than when you're kind of forced to?
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. I think that's probably what they're going to most likely do. I just think that the NBA is trying to figure out ways to get more people involved, more people to kind of watch the product. And I think that less games and more meaningful. I mean, we kind of see this with the NFL, for example. Less games means more people are going to pay attention because there's only one thing going on at that moment. It's not like you're getting a Seahawks game on a Tuesday and a Thursday.
Yeah.
Instead of just on one Sunday. So I think you're going to see more of less games. I think the biggest question is going to be for the NBA is how do you get the fans to come back to the arenas? Because we know that there's going to be a lot of people that are not. I mean, there's obviously people that are ready to go back and watch and kind of live everyday normal life like they want to, and then there's also going to be the crowd that's like, you know what, I don't know if I should really go to it. I know the game looks better on TV anyway. I mean, that's kind of something that is going to be an interesting kind of conversation and topic to talk about is how do we get the fans back? Because I know that the CDC and many of these other organizations are going to kind of implement social distancing. And, I heard even some rumors about just classrooms in general for schools is that they're going to try and put plexiglasses between each student, which I think is unrealistic at this time.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a matter of, how do we get back to a normal society? Obviously, it's not going to be normal like the way it was back then. Some things are going to have to change, but it's just, I don't know what to say in order for fans to come back to the game.
Yeah. It's going to, I know for me personally, once they say it's okay, I'm not going to just start living life like life is normal again, going out, doing things. I've probably waited for a while. So it'll be tough. It'll be tough to see what they do.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a tough situation. But the good news is, before we, kind of move on to the future, we know that the NBA, as of right now, is scheduled to come back July, according to Sham and Wojnarowski. The epic battle between the Woj and the ShamWows.
Sham's been winning that.
Sham has been winning that. He's been dunking all over Woj just because I think of the, ESPN type of deal. I think that Sham and The Athletic have a more insider information. But nevertheless, that is what we have here for you guys today. We know that the NBA is going to likely return in mid July, and also the House of Mouse, Mickey Mouse, is going to be hosting the games for the NBA. But let's
Let's
move on to
go.
something that Disney has produced, and that's, of course, The Last Dance. We know that this was a 10-part mini docuseries on Michael Jordan in the 1997-1998 NBA season, where Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls take on Karl Malone and John Stockton of the Utah Jazz. This was the final 2-1 because we know that it's talking about the last two championships in this scenario. But Brad, let's talk about at least episode 9. What did you make of it?
It was a good episode. Um, I like how they went and visited the flu game. The story about MJ eating a whole pizza to himself didn't really align with like what I think. Just because for the last 23 years we've been told it was a flu, and when you think flu, you're thinking sickness. They told us he was throwing up, but then in the documentary, it's he ordered a pizza, and apparently it was food poisoned. How realistic is that? You're in Utah and you order a pizza during the day before a finals game. Eat the whole thing to yourself. I don't know. It just seems like a cover up to me. It just seems like a cover up.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be one of the questions I asked, so we'll just get right into it. Yeah, so I think that with the flu game, or the so called flu game, I think that obviously I think it was a cover up. I think food poisoning and just kind of a pizza when you have about what, like 4 or 5 people with you. I know that if we're in a group setting and there's a pizza down there, everyone's gonna grab at least a slice of it. I think that a whole pizza. Obviously, athletes can't eat a whole pizza. It's obviously, I think it's like 1,000, maybe 2,000
Oh yeah,
calories,
yeah,
but easily. But nevertheless, I think that I think pizza is kind of a lame excuse. I don't think it's the right one.
yeah,
And especially, you have 4 or 5 guys showing up to deliver a pizza. I also don't believe that. I think that most likely it was a little late night. I'm not sure where they can, because living in Utah myself, I'm not sure where you're gonna have that late night fun in Salt Lake City. But nevertheless, you could have it in your hotel room. Not gonna say it is, but I think I agree with you, Brad. I don't believe the flu game. I don't believe the Pizzagate story. I don't think that it's. I don't believe that Michael Jordan just ate a pizza by himself and that's how he got sick. There was obviously some more things involved in it. Luckily, they won that game, and Michael Jordan kind of took advantage of that scenario and created his basketball shoes, or the shoes are called the flu game, which are the Bread 12s. And then people just kind of use that to market the shoes and whatnot. I mean, it's just, I think for me, these last 2 episodes felt a little bit too quick and too kind of glossed over the whole 2 championships of their battle series against the Utah Jazz. That's how I felt for it. But yeah, The Last Dance, the episode 9 flu game, just not buying it.
yeah. I don't buy that at all. I feel like MJ would be the type of person to find out if somebody actually poisoned his pizza.
Yeah, it's just, I really don't know.
I,
And then I think another thing too in this episode 9 was, of course, the Reggie Miller story. They brought him to a game 7. Indiana Pacers was a pretty good team, I would say. I mean, what did you make of the whole Reggie Miller Michael Jordan kind of, I wouldn't say rivalry, but sort of battle?
yeah, I like how they portrayed it. It was dope to see them kind of break it down. They said, oh, the Pacers had the Davis brothers, they had Rick Smits, they had Reggie Miller, Mark Jackson. That they had a good team. So it was cool to see them put that little battle in there. Wish they would have showed a little more of like that game 7. But I like the way they showed, Reggie. They interviewed Reggie and they showed him coming up with the play to push off on Jordan, go get some space, and then catch the shot, hit it. Or was that episode 10? That was episode 9. That was episode 9.
Episode 9.
Yeah, yeah. So I like that. I thought it was very Michael Jordan esque of how he sees that, he sees Reggie, and he's like, okay, it's time to take over.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we know what the bleh, I can't even talk today. We know what the Indiana Pacers team was about. That team was really good, and if they brought him to a game seven with the Chicago Bulls, and if Reggie Miller would have showed up in that last game, it would have been a different story. So I don't know what it was, but Reggie Miller just didn't show up. But then we got to talk about the next thing in this documentary, and that's of course the Karl Malone MVP. It's some I don't know what it is. It's like you could have just looked at Michael Jordan the wrong way, and he has an excuse to come up with as to why it's going to fuel his fire. Like I love that about him, but it's also like really that's what's going to fuel your fire. Just someone winning an MVP or
Yeah,
someone looking at you the wrong way or someone not acknowledging you. I mean, I don't know. I'm not too big in that whole competitive fire. I'm just not a big fan of it, but
yeah,
you got to respect it at least. I mean, he's consistent with it.
yeah. You got to respect it mostly because he won. But I mean, how different would that look if he hadn't been winning? He might just look a little crazy. But since he did win, I guess I respect it.
Yeah, and then of course that was the first championship against the Utah Jazz that we talked about here in episode 9. And then episode 10, the finale. This one was more about kind of the crazy Utah Jazz fans, still crazy to this day, with some with some rumors and whatnot. Russell Westbrook would know more about that than I would. Well, actually, we probably would know more about it. We both, at least I lived there and I kind of lived
Yeah,
it. But yeah, so we got to talk about that. The Utah Jazz fans, obviously crazy fanatics, um, kind of a crazy group and bunch. I mean, we all kind of think of them as kind of the Mormon state, they're a little bit more quiet, happy, friendly, but we know that they're just as aggressive, just as passionate, and just as crazy as any other fan base in America. I mean, you've seen some of the signs that they made. We even see it to this day. I mean, I remember going to games at the Delta Center, which is what it was called back then. A lot of fun to go and kind of be in that arena. It's a kind of a enclosed arena. A lot of kind of creates that bubble and that kind of loud atmosphere that a lot of arenas do. But I feel like Utah's arena is a little special in that aspect, and I think that hopefully Seattle's arena will be like that when they come back, because I know that they're building their new one to this day. But
man.
but I'm kind of getting off topic here. We got to talk about episode 10. Michael Jordan, Game 6 against Brian Russell. Was it a push off? Yes or no, Brad?
As a hooper, that's a push off. I understand what he says. It wasn't like a push off in the sense that he completely pushed off and made space. It was more that he used Byron Russell's own weight and gravity because he was already going in that direction. Just gave him a little tap, and it forced him down, and then he pulled it back and hit that shot. It is a
Yeah.
push off though.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a little bit of a push off, but then again, I would say that Reggie Miller's was more of a push off than that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but I think it's still a cool scenario. I mean, we also got in this episode, I believe, either it was episode 9 or 10. We're kind of talking about both the Steve Kerr story, about his dad, kind of that scenario about what happened to his dad tragically. But it's still cool to see that and it kind of goes to show the hypocrisy of everybody, right? That Steve Kerr hits some clutch shots. They all kind of think that Michael Jordan hit those shots, but really it was Steve Kerr, it was Paxton, it was all these guys. Like, and that's kind of the hypocrisy. And we'll kind of talk about this when we kind of do our overall review of this series. But yeah, I think that this was. I think the only other thing was, of course, it was the shot. It was Game 6. They kind of won by a record margin in this series as well.
yeah. I held him to 54 points. Was that game 2?
I believe it was Game 2. Yeah, I mean it was.
Yeah,
I mean there was
that's
just and
disrespectful.
yeah. I mean, I think even Jerry Sloan kind of joked about it as well in his press conference. But the one thing I really
Yeah.
wanted to talk about too is that it kind of wasn't mentioned in this documentary. Maybe we'll just talk about it now since we're kind of done reviewing it. It's just kind of the overall feel of this documentary. Brad, what did you make of The Last Dance? What did you feel that it was a true documentary and kind of showed you things that we haven't really seen from Michael Jordan, or is it kind of the same old song and dance in your opinion?
I definitely wouldn't call it like a true documentary. But it did show us some sides of Michael and things that we've never seen, like as a society at all. You know, like I said before, he looked just like some god, Black Jesus that we'd never seen before. Didn't know who he was, didn't know how he talked, didn't know, you know. So it was cool. It was super dope to see the emotion. Him crying on the floor with the sound, you know, after winning another championship, right after his father passed. That emotion was crazy. It was cool to see him being interviewed and talk like that, the dialogue and all that. But uh, to me, it seemed like a lot of painting. You know, painting Jordan as Black Jesus. You know, it was a lot of propaganda to me. I know he had two close friends, like two of his closest friends were executive producers on it. And so he had free creative control over that, what goes in, what goes out. And you can see he left out a bunch of stuff, kind of did Scottie Pippen dirty. Not even kind of, they really did Scottie dirty, except for game 6 in episode 10, where they showed him battling through that injury, which was dope to see. Uh, but other than that, a lot of propaganda to me.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you there. I know Ken Burns is a very documentarian that I kind of watched some of his documentaries, but he kind of talked about this as well, kind of saying that if you're there influencing the very fact of it getting made, it means that certain aspects that you don't necessarily want are not going to be in, and that's of course what he's talking about with Michael Jordan being kind of the final say of like, oh, can we add this? And they'll be like, no, don't add that. Don't talk about that. And I think that, like you said, this is kind of pandering to the Michael Jordan crowd. We know that the people that were Jordan fans, that were like kids and teenagers back then, are adults now with their own kids and kind of reliving the history of their childhood with Michael Jordan. And I think that what I kind of find annoying about that is the fact that they don't really go true in depth. And this is something that I was really disappointed in when we kind of talked about, and you said earlier before we kind of started this episode recording, they didn't really talk about the Houston Rockets winning their championships. They didn't mention that. They didn't mention kind of the New York Knicks besides their battle series with the Chicago Bulls in terms of they got to the finals finally, and they were kind of looking maybe that this was going to be their year. I mean, obviously, it could have been. They just don't want to talk about them. But I think that I agree with Ken Burns in the fact that this is just not good journalism if you're trying to go for a journalistic approach. But we know that the director and ESPN would just glorify Michael Jordan. It's nothing new to me. I mean, I think I've seen everything in this documentary that's been in there besides, the more personable stuff with Michael Jordan. I've seen all this stuff before. I've seen documentaries of the Chicago Bulls. And I think what I kind of also found annoying is that you only interviewed people that were kind of associated with NBC, with Ahmad Rashad obviously being one of them, but also kind of like Bob Costas. You have a lot of the Chicago Tribune writers there, a lot of like Michael Jordan friendly reviewers and reporters that were with him. And I just think that when you do that, you're not really being truly genuine and honest with the fans and also with everybody, because I think everybody wanted to see, and if you're a historian like we are, Brad, for basketball, we wanted to see something new and something different, and I felt like we didn't really get that in this documentary. It was a great documentary, the cinematography was great, everything about this was awesome, but I just felt that it kind of fell flat on its face when it came to the final end and the hurdle when it came to talking about Michael Jordan in a new perspective, in a new light. I just felt like we could have gotten a little more authentic from Michael Jordan, but like we talked about before, this is on brand with Michael Jordan. He likes to protect the brand. He likes to make sure that none of the things is bad press. He wants to make sure that he doesn't piss anybody off. He wants to make sure that everybody is kind of calm. Kind of wants to play both sides. Kind of pulling a Sweden where you don't want to interrupt both sides. You're very neutral, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how he sold his shoes, was just, staying neutral, staying in the middle. And that's another part he left out in the documentary. I talked about it a couple episodes ago. Leaving Craig Hodges and that whole scenario, how he got blackballed out of the league, just out of the series, And I feel like you could at least mention it, but MJ doesn't want to ruffle feathers, so he's not going to do that.
Yeah, and then we also had a teammate of his, Horace Grant, also kind of talk about Michael Jordan and, kind of the whole scenario about the airplane not feeding him. and just kind of leaving that part out. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that Michael Jordan left out for obvious reasons. He doesn't want to ruffle feathers. He doesn't want to start anything. And I think that at the end of this episode, we kind of also had the scenario of Reinsdorf, the owner for the team, kind of saying that he was going to give Phil Jackson a contract. Kind of also talking about the Chicago Bulls and how everyone would have taken a 1-year deal to win one more championship to get their 7th one. What did you make of that scenario? Do you believe that the Chicago Bulls could have won their 7th championship?
Nah, I don't believe it. I think it would have been cool to see, and I can understand Jordan's like, I can understand his feeling of, damn, we never even got to try, and that regret. But I personally don't think they would have done it. I think Scotty was already, a foot out the door. He had been getting hoed on money, reputation, whatever you can name it. All he had was those rings, but nothing else. So I think he was already out the door. Big payday coming up, which he got. I think Phil was also already on his way out because he could see what was happening, and he had that Lakers job lined up.
Yeah,
So
that's what
I
I was going
don't
to
think.
talk about. I think I agree with you, Brad. I think he had some secret deal with the LA Lakers, kind of seeing Shaq and Kobe, and was like,
Hmm.
I think I should probably move over there and see what I can do. I mean, and I think that Phil Jackson, I want to agree with Skip Bayless, and I usually try not to. I think that he kind of hosed Michael Jordan at the end, saying that, I'm going to retire, I'm going to go off into the sunset. And Michael Jordan was like, yeah, I agree. I want to go off into the sunset. But I think if Phil Jackson would have stayed one more year, or if they could have gotten a better coach, I think that they would have honestly tried to keep the team together. And I think Michael Jordan wouldn't have retired. He would have stayed and wanted to play more.
Yeah, because he said Phil was the deal. Like if Phil's here, I'm here. But if he's not, I'm gone. So, but I know Phil had other plans. Phil seemed a little shady to me. Like he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. But the way he's good at handling personalities is because he's manipulating the whole situation.
Yeah,
And he kind of did the same with Sack and Kobe.
I agreed with you. I mean, that's the reason what he kind of did to Jerry Krause and whatnot, and how he got the job for Chicago at the beginning, and then kind of the personality changed once he had the job. It's kind of like using Jerry Krause in that aspect, and I think
Same
that's
with
kind
Tex
of
Winter.
yeah. Even Tex
Like he
Winters
doesn't get
using
his credit for the
yeah,
triangle.
exactly. I mean, he got like a little shout out. It's like, hey, Tex Winters, thanks for the offense, and that
Yeah.
was it. So I think they also did a good job of mentioning Jerry Krause, and I think Scottie Pippen. I wish he would have done this when Jerry Krause was alive. Obviously, he's dead now. I wish that they would have given Jerry Krause his props when he was alive, but now that he's dead, I feel like it's kind of easy to do it because he's dead, and it doesn't really matter in that aspect because Scottie Pippen could have just said it earlier. But I understand like why they would mad at Jerry Krause. But I think that you also got to. I mean, obviously he's not going to get 100% of the credit, but you should at least give him 20 to 25% of it, and then you give it to the rest of the players and Phil Jackson.
Maybe 10, just for kind of being an asshole, if we're being real. Like coming in saying, I don't care if you win 82 games, this is your last season here. Like for what? And then wanting to trade Scotty for T-Mac. Like, why would you do that? I honestly don't even believe T-Mac and MJ would have worked out. This guy just didn't like, he wanted to prove that, oh, the GM does it all, not the players. And I think if trading for T-Mac would have been a big mistake because Scotty played elite defense, which you needed. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole scenario where there's a lot of hearsay, a lot of hearsay, I should say. And I think that when we kind of look back at this documentary, like we talked about, there's going to be a lot of questions and answers that people want to know. Would Michael Jordan be able to win a 7th championship with the Chicago Bulls? I mean, there's a lot of storylines coming out of this, but overall, Brad, what did you make of the Last Dance documentary series? Would you give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down?
in entertainment value, I give it a thumbs up just because, we've been bored at home, no sports. It was a great time. I'm glad they pushed it up early. Um, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it. But like as a basketball junkie, like historian, like you said, like I'd give it a thumbs down because it's just a bunch of propaganda.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would give this entertainment value probably a 9 out of 10. I think that, like I talked about, the cinematography and the way that it was shot and the way that they kind of did the interviews, I loved it. I just wish they would have been a little more balanced in terms of having people that not hated Michael Jordan, but were very critical of him. I know that they had the guy that made the Jordan rules, and that was kind of like their counterbalance to all the Jordan propaganda, but it still wasn't enough. I felt like it should have been a little bit more balanced. Kind of have people that were saying like, yeah, we kind of think that Michael Jordan did this, or Michael Jordan was this way, and just kind of talking about how he, the way that he was. And I think that instead, it's just like you talked about. It just felt like propaganda. It felt like Jordan was this sort of holy, godly figure that could do no wrong. I mean, obviously, the gambling was kind of like the quote unquote only thing he did wrong. And maybe, obviously, besides the
drinking,
teammates,
maybe, and
the drinking
punching
and
his teammates,
and maybe the cigarettes, or not cigarettes,
bullying.
the cigars after every game.
Bro, I was thinking, in the last episode, right, when he's smoking that cigar, I was thinking to myself, that has to be like a blunt. There's no way this guy enjoys smoking cigars that much. There's just no way.
You think? Do you think they fancily rolled it up for him?
I think so. It wasn't like fat like a cigar. It looked like a blunt wrap, and skinny and long. And I was like, that has to be weed, dog. You seen MJ's eyes? They're permanently yellow from Hennessy. I think weed contributed to that.
These are just rumors, by the way. We don't.
Yeah,
These
no,
are,
just complete speculation.
yeah, speculation. But it's just kind of crazy, also to me too. Kind of looking at and just kind of talking about Jordan's history. It's crazy how much he aged from being a rookie in '84 to ending his career in '98. Like, it's just crazy how much he's aged. And I think that the drinking and the smoking had a lot to do with it. And I think that Michael Jordan probably could have looked younger if he would have just cut that stuff off. But I mean, that's kind of just like a something else. I don't know what even to
Yeah,
call it.
it's
I mean,
like neither here nor there kind of type
yeah.
shit.
I mean, it is what it is. I think obviously, if Michael Jordan would be playing in today's game, I think that would be a no-no from every trainer everywhere. I think every trainer would try and slap that out of his hand. Maybe not Tim Grover, because maybe he enjoys that stuff as well. Speculation, of course, but nevertheless, like we talked about, the entertainment value for The Last Dance was awesome. It was amazing. We enjoyed it. But when we talk about the historic part of it, if we talk about the history, if we talk about kind of the context of it, I would give it a thumbs down, like you said, like a 4 or a 5 out of 10. Because I felt that they could have been a little bit more objective when it came to Michael Jordan. They could have talked a little bit more about kind of why he was burnt out. Obviously, we know why he was burnt out, but kind of get more into detail about it, because I'm sure a lot of these players today and even back then were burnt out at a certain point. But the fact that he had to retire for almost 2 years just kind of makes me feel like, okay, there had to be a little bit something more. Obviously, I'm not going to go with the conspiracy theory of the gambling and the shadow banning of Michael Jordan. But I
Yeah,
think there has to be something else there. It can't just be all baseball. It can't just be. I feel like it just can't be baseball. I think there's something else there that Michael Jordan just doesn't want to talk about. It is what it is. But like we talked about, this was a great documentary for the time that we're in right now, where there's just no basketball.
yeah, of course. I mean, to be fair, I feel like I kind of knew it would be like this. I didn't think we were going to get anything that would harm his image. MJ's not going to put anything out that he doesn't like. Anything that would look bad, no, he's not putting it out. We already all knew about him punching Steve Kerr, so that was fine. And to the Jordan fans, they're like, oh, he put in Steve Kerr, like, and MJ punching him, and he even apologized. Like, look, there's MJ being, human and being kind of an asshole, but then redeeming himself. But we all knew that. You know, there were other teammates that he bullied, like Scott Burrell, that we also already knew, but other teammates that they didn't show or anything.
Yeah, and obviously they didn't want to show that for obvious reasons, because they don't want to make Michael Jordan seem like this sort of jerk. And I think that they should have went on with that storyline. I think they had in like the episodes 7 and 8, where kind of Michael Jordan was crying because he hated the fact that he was viewed this way as a teammate. And they should have went more into that and talked about it a little bit more. And I think it would have been a cool story to talk about how kind of Michael Jordan regretted doing that stuff as he got a little older, maybe he doesn't regret it. I don't know, but I think that they could have talked a little bit more about that with the other teammates besides Burrell and Kerr. I think it would have been a cool storyline to talk about.
Yeah, I saw. I mean, I read an article with Horace Grant, and how they cut out his criticism of Michael, and because they interviewed him a couple times, and he had a part where he criticized Michael for the lunch thing, the food thing on the plane, and for the bullying of other players, but they just cut it out. And also, I read an article with Robert Parrish, who went over to the Bulls later in his career, and he said it was in a practice. He like fumbled a layup or something from MJ, and MJ got in his face, and Robert Parrish was like, "Get out of my face! I'm not obsessed with you like all these people are. I have my own rings." And MJ said something like, "I'm going to kick your ass," and Robert stepped to him and was like, "Nah, you're really not." And then MJ backed up and never talked to him like disrespectfully again or tried to fight him again.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stories like that. I've also read the Robert Parrish one. I was like, come on, Michael.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Like, that man is an OG to you. How are you going to try and whoop his ass? That doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Just because he fumbled a layup in practice, that's crazy.
yeah, and it's just kind of one of those things where we know that this documentary, like we talked about, it was not going to be sort of you know a critical thing of Michael Jordan. I would love for there to be one just to kind of counterbalance this Last Dance documentary and kind of talk about the fails of Michael Jordan and kind of talking about how Michael Jordan grew from those failures. I mean, I think that the problem we have, and this is just a history thing when we talk about to history, the winner of the battles that we've seen throughout history and time are usually the ones that write the history, right?
Yep,
Uh,
yep, yep.
I mean, we've seen this throughout history. I mean, from Genghis Khan to U.S. for World War II. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff like that, and I think that because Michael Jordan won those 6 for 6 rings and Finals MVPs, he gets to rewrite the history. He gets to talk about how he dominated the whole NBA and left All Stars and Hall of Famers without NBA championships, and I just think that it's annoying because we also are now getting these polls from ESPN talking about who has a son named Bronny, and it turns out to be Michael Jordan has a son named Bronny. I mean, 51% go with Michael Jordan, 49 with LeBron James. It's like one of those things where with Michael Jordan, what I know that we have recency bias when it comes to this stuff because now everyone watched the documentary. Now everyone thinks that Michael Jordan's the GOAT. But I
Hmm.
think that what we need to start doing is we need to start kind of looking at everything as a big picture. I think we're kind of too narrow minded on just one thing. I think people need to start doing a little more history research on Michael Jordan, on LeBron James, and all these, whoever's the GOAT. I know that the GOAT discussion is going to be from here on out. I don't personally like the GOAT discussion because I think it's annoying that we can't just enjoy these players. But, people love to discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people. But like you said, I agree. We should stop. Like people should stop being so narrow minded and actually look at the picture. But they don't want to do that. They just want, they just want to put out and look at the stuff ESPN has. So it's like, oh, Michael Jordan scored 61 in a loss, but they still gave him the award. Like MJ's the GOAT. What a guy. Or MJ beat up his teammates, but competitiveness. It takes sacrifices to win. Like, who cares? He won. He did it in the end. So it's just people aren't going to take the time to actually be objective or do their own research. Look at his teammates, put in context. They're not going to do that. It's just
Yeah.
OMJ's the goat, Black Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to be the end of this episode and really this series, guys. We'll probably come back here and talk a little bit more about NBA as it goes forward. Maybe talk about our lists, our top 5 lists. I know I hate doing those stuff, but everybody loves to talk about it, and I think that it's a great way to kind of get the channel popping. So I would love to talk to you, Brad, more about these kind of lists and kind of more about NBA stuff. But like I said, guys, that is going to be the end of the video. Brad, do you have anything to say before we head out?
Let's see. I'm excited for the NBA to come back. Can't wait.
Exactly. We can't wait for the NBA to come back. We're going to see, hopefully, the Lakers and the Clippers battle in the Western Conference Finals. That's going to be an awesome one, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on that. And then hopefully we get the Lakers versus Bucks. But that's not my opinion, and that's not what we're here to talk about. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. This is Brad, either up above or to the side of me. We'll catch you guys in the next video. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this content. Let us know what you guys thought of The Last Dance. Did you enjoy it? Did you not like it? And we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.
Peace.